All right? Do people want to shout it out? Or what did your neighbor say? Or what did the friend of your neighbor? It might not be your neighbor, it might be the friend of your neighbor. Yes, please? Yes? Aha. You couldn't stop thinking about your better half. All right, that's one sign. Anyone else? From this side? Silence from that side? All right. I can see people are being a bit shy about it. So before, okay, please proceed.
Morning, everyone. I think one of our friends or one of the neighbors was mentioning that when you find yourself desiring to spend more time with the person and wanting to know them more, then that's also like a sign that you're in love with that person. Yeah.
All right. Or desiring to spend more time with a person. So as I start this, I'm actually going to start by answering one of Simon's question, like why do women say the opposite of what they mean? And I'll say that it's because women think it's obvious. You should have known in the first place. Why are you asking me something obvious? If I'm upset, a boy will know I'm upset. So for her to ask me, are you upset? It's obvious. So that's how women reason. So as you were told, I'm married to Kiama Mugambi. I had known Kiama for a long time. We were in the music team together. But my story is not that one of seeing him and falling in love at first sight. No. I was in college, busy running my life, and he was busy having his life. And all we did was to have our music practices. He goes his way, and I go my own way. But then we were put in a project where we had to work together. And that is when I began discovering who this guy is. He's an amazing guy. And I was excited as we talked. I realized, my God, he's so intelligent. We'd never really taken time to really talk. And he is funny. And he is talented. And I think as somebody has said, I began to desire to spend more time with him. And the phone calls, when he calls, even in the office, I just know now this is not a good one. Because you just go on and talk about everything. And before you know it, it's an hour, it's 2 hours, you're looking forward, giggling. In our language, you'd say giggling, kaudosere. You're giggling in a silly manner. You can't really explain it, but you're joyous, you're happy. This guy makes you happy. And so those, for me, I would say, were some of the things that made me think, I think there's something more than what we are seeing here. And of course, at the end of the day, we did get married. Now, I remember that when we were dating, some of the things we would do, we were young, we had just come from university, we did not have a lot of money. So sometimes we would take a walk to the Arboretum and just sit there talking. At that time, I don't know what it is about being in love. You're able to hear the birds singing, things that generally you do not pay attention to, or how beautiful the flowers look, or how beautiful they smell. There's a way in which life is just colored, and you wake up, you're humming, you're just generally happy. In fact, I think that's why people are told you're glowing. You're actually glowing, you're just happy, and you're peaceful. And I actually thought it would never end. And Kiama used to have ideas. In fact, when he proposed to me, I'll never forget, and it was in December, and I was actually quite unwell that day. But he just removed his violin and played a piece. And then after that, he asked me, will you marry me? So I used to be like, yeah, this feeling, it will never end. We would read books together and discuss and analyze and enjoy the intellectual experiences. So basically what I'm saying is that romantic relationships are very, very exciting, especially in the early days. You go on exciting days, you spend every possible waking moment together. I would say looking into each other's eyes in soft candlelight if you're out for dinner, connecting eyeball to eyeball, isn't it? Pouring out your hearts to each other and just feeling, I will live like this forever. And I remember specifically Pastor Mureithi talking to us in one of our Ndoa classes. And I think we were doing conflict resolution. And in our group, so he was talking about conflict and how they'd have conflict and resolve. And we looked at them, all of us in our Ndoa group, with a look that seemed to suggest, poor you. As guys, we shall never get there. We love each other. And we were looking at them like, hey, our pastors are in a bit of trouble. They sort of need help. And I'm telling you, after we got married, after like 3 months, we met as a group, and we all looked at each other, and we laughed. And we laughed because we had now begun to experience what it was. So basically, the feeling of being in love, that romantic excitement, we shall live in bliss happily ever after, is that as you go along, you start experiencing the bumps, the rough road. It is not so smooth after all. As life happens in relationships, romantic moments and gestures reduce, and they are far in between. Long romantic walks together are replaced with long hours away from each other. Where once, sometimes you could not wait to be together, sometimes you're so busy, and sometimes you have conflict, you are actually deliberately working to be away from each other so that you do not speak. Where words were once tender and full of love, babe, you cough, it's like, are you okay? You're all familiar with that, or some of you. Now you start giving each other silent treatment, speaking coldly. When one of you coughs, you're like, why don't you go to hospital? Before it was, are you okay? Why aren't you going, have you called the doctor? You know, and you begin to become rude, and there are disagreements, and there are fights and quarrels in their relationship. And one wonders, how do we get there? How do you come from such exciting, exuberant love to disagreements, disappointment, just wondering to yourself, did I make the right decision? Did I marry the right person? How can you avoid becoming a casualty of broken relationships? In our current generation, how do we find relationships that last? If you've ever asked any of these questions, I'm glad you're here. I think you're in the right place. If you're single, I think this is an excellent opportunity to learn. If you are dating or engaged, you will learn from those who have gone before you. If you're married, newly, or you've been married for a long time, you might be facing some of the scenarios that we shall be talking about. If you were married in the past and you are cautious and you're not sure about this love and relationship things, I encourage you to sit through this series and listen. I believe there are truths in God's word that will all find liberating for us. So I want to propose, and if the people in academia sometimes will say, I want to posit, I want to suggest to you that we all have a box of dreams, hopes, desires, things that you want to do, to achieve as you go along. And that, invisible, I think we have a box here that has our hopes, our dreams, our desires as we get into these relationships. And in the early days of relationships, some of these dreams, desires, hopes can be a bit undefined. But the longer we stay in the relationship, the more certain we become of what it is we need or think in order to be happy. Now, I had conversations with a few people, and they explained to me what some of their dreams, desires were when they were getting married, for others as they date. For others, as they are single, they have this list that has the dreams, desires, hopes that they hope that will be fulfilled. And even for some who were married are no longer married, and they say, this is what I had hoped, this is what I had desired. And it's interesting. So we're going to go through it with some of you. So what were some of the hopes, dreams, or what would be some of your hopes and dreams as you get into a relationship and desires? We agreed you're going to help me along, so you can shout out, and then I see if it's here, and if it's not, we'll still go with it. Come on, guys. You guys have no hopes, no dreams, no desires. Companionship. Yes, actually, somebody mentioned that one to me. Companionship, yes. Doing everything together. You be together all the time. Yeah? Financial provision by your husband. Thank you very much, Cynthia, for saying what most think and are not bold enough to say. Thank you very much. Big house. Yeah? To live in a big house. Yeah? With a picket fence. 4 or 5 bedrooms. And servant quarters where you can ring a small bell and people come to attend to you. Yeah, with lawns that need to be manicured. Yeah, so most people have dreams like those. Gary? No? Yeah, 4x4. This is just a sample. 4x4, yeah, a German car. Yeah, some people hoped they would have that. They have their desires to get that. Babies. No, yeah? Ni lazima majina yaendelee, legacy. And the names of the families must go on. And that's a very serious thing. So babies, for some maybe it's 3, for some it's 5, for some it's 2, maybe for some it's none. And then cash money. Nobody wants cash money. Yeah? You hope that you would have cash money. So those are just some of the hopes, desires. I think somebody has mentioned, others told me what I wanted was companionship. Somebody who would be my friend. I spoke to somebody, and this one applied to me too, who said, I hoped that when I get married, that he would close the doors. So let me divert a bit as I'm looking at the clock. One of my hopes when we got married, so my dad used to close the doors. Like, the final lap, kabla muende kulala, he would go around, make sure all the doors to the outside are closed. Now, and my dad also bought meat at home. My mother never used to go to the butchery. Hiyo ni kazi ya wanaume. So now, Wabui Kiama gets married. Now, my husband on the other side, his father used to travel quite a bit. So the mother would buy the meat, and the mother would close the doors, because when the father is not there, you're not going to say, nyumba ilale wazi. So even if I sleep last, initially when I got married, I would not check the doors. Kiama should have checked the doors. So once or twice, we slept with the door open. Okay, not ajar, but if you just, whatever, turned the knob, the door would open. I'm an early riser, so I would wake up and I find the door open. Then I tell Kema, you did not close the door. And he's like, but you slept last. I left you there. I said, no, you should have closed the door. Now, where we lived, we would pass through a butchery on our way home. If there was no meat at home, I kid you not, I would not enter into the butchery to buy meat. Tutakula maharagwe, eat beans, eat whatever is there. And my husband would be like, Kwani, there's no meat? Then I'm like, but you haven't bought meat. Then he's like, but you passed through the butchery. I'm like, no, but it's your work to buy meat. So I'm just trying to say that you have even some unspoken hopes and desires that you are not even aware. So, so we've talked about children. Sometimes also one has, of course, a desire or a hope in regard to career. Some people want to, you think we both work in corporate, so it will be a double income household. But maybe someone is also thinking, no, when we get married, if we get children, I'm going to stay home, take care of the children, whilst you work. That is also one desire. And then you think, well, we'll go on exotic holidays, maybe to the Maldives. Mombasa, see, people don't go there anymore. You go to the Maldives, Bahamas, or Hawaii, all those exotic places that you would want to think about. And you go on those holidays together. We'll never lack anything. We're going to have enough money, live within our budget. We are going to buy a home just like our parents did, whether it's a house or it's an apartment. We will save up and be able to do those things. The point I'm making is that whether it is money, homes, cars, kids, companionship, friendship, careers, and so on, Everybody gets into a relationship with an invisible box of desires about how things are going to work out. For women, mostly, you will want the security of the physical things. You also want to be treated with kindness, with affection, with love, and things like those. For men, they will also expect that when they get into relationships, that they will also be cooked for. You've heard them saying, and by the way, I was surprised to discover that this is regardless, let me use the word regardless, of how sophisticated it may be, men want to be cooked for, specifically by their wives if possible. See, mmesikia mtu akisema hapo breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Men who are honest will tell you that is what I would want. They want to be treated with respect, and a big one for men, as one of my young friends recently told me, they want, when they come home, it is quiet, comforting, and welcoming to them, not met with a string of demands. So everybody is coming in with their box of dreams. And that box of dreams and hopes and desires will be so surprised that it turns and becomes a box of expectations. Thank you. A box of expectations. So for me, they are my hopes, they are my desires, they are my dreams, but for the other person, it becomes a box of expectations. So when I say I would love to live in a nice 4 or 5 bedroomed house, what my husband is hearing, please provide a 4 or 5 bedroom house. So for me, it's my hope, my desire, but him is hearing, this is what I expect you to do. When I say I'd love to have 5 children, which is what we actually initially wanted to do, what my husband is hearing, Ebu, tupate watoto watano, you need to take care of 5 kids. Yeah? When I say, but that car is lovely, I have made an observation. It looks like a powerful machine. My husband is hearing, I need to buy a powerful machine for this lady. And similarly, the same way, if my husband says, I would love or I dream of having a warm meal, what I'm hearing is, woman, prepare a hot meal for me. Yeah? So you have what is your box of hopes and dreams becomes a box of expectations for the other side. And that box of expectations is informed by a number of things, or there are many things that influence us in what we place in our box of expectations. The first one is our environment, what we see around us. We've seen other relationships and what has or hasn't worked for them. Maybe it's a TV series, and the main characters you watch, especially, they used to have this in the soaps, where the weddings will almost always be in a lovely beach somewhere with the sun setting. And they, after that, they almost look like they want to go with their horses, with the wind running through their hairs. And you think, that is actually what I would want. For some of us, especially ladies, maybe you saw your mother being a stay-home mom, being supported. Maybe it was rough for her financially. And that informs your desire. You want to be a financially independent woman. You will never have to tell a man, nipatie, yeah, because of what you saw. For some of us, maybe your dad worked while your mom stayed home and he provided abundantly, and the kids were looked after. And so in your mind, what will work is when you have children, you become a stay-home mom and look after the children. Perhaps for your husband, it could be both parents were working. And so for him, the expectation is we are both working and bringing what we make together in one box. So he does expect you to work. For some, it could be the dad was the provider, so he expects his wife to be dependent on him and to stay home. So basically, your background, your environment informs your box of expectations. And your background also informs your box of expectations. Where are you coming from? What did you see when you were growing up? And what is interesting is that the things we see when we're growing up, we do not necessarily know that they are influencing us so much until we are in the relationship. Then we find that our expectations are based on where we are coming from and based on our current environment. And at that point, things begin to go south. because your expectations are totally in conflict with the other person's expectations. Me, I wanted to stay home, take care of the kids. Him, he wants me to work so that we're having a double income. I was hoping that he would be providing us this kind of house. He's not able to provide that kind of home. And so you find that, you begin to clash. If your expectations is that you're going to be a corporate person, especially for the ladies, you also expect him to input quite a bit in running the home. I remember a friend of mine yesterday saying how she used to expect that her husband would offer to wash the dishes. See, we are running this thing together, but there are no kids. So I wash dishes today. It's natural that you should wash dishes tomorrow. But I think to date, the offer has never come. And it was just, you do not help in housework. And it is amazing how sometimes we expect that it is 50-50. Nikifanya hivi na wewe ufanye vile. And then your husband is thinking, I'm the man of the home, the king of this kingdom right here. How does the king of the kingdom go to the kitchen to wash dishes or to cook? And so you find you now begin to have a fight because you had your box of desires, hoping that your relationship would turn out well and happy. Your husband has his box of desires, hoping that the relationship would turn out happy, and then there is this huge conflict that you're struggling with. And what were your hopes, dreams, desires? For the other person, they begin to feel as if it's a noose around their neck because they are hearing them as expectations. And according to you, your dreams, your hopes, your desires are reasonable. They're rational. Simon, surely, is there anything wrong with a boy wanting to live in a 4-bedroom big house, mansion, that has manicured lawns? Like, what isn't it reasonable? Is it reasonable? Let me laugh because men are quiet from up here. The men are not speaking. So it is reasonable, yeah? Surely. Let me ask Tina. Tina, is it reasonable for your husband to expect that you will make him 3 warm meals a day? It's a reasonable desire. Is there anything irrational about that desire, men? That you will be given a warm meal? There's nothing irrational about that desire, isn't it? Is there anything irrational, Tina? If your husband expects when he gets home, there is peace and quiet. In fact, he would probably want a dimly well-lit home. He comes in, you actually say hello, take his coat and his briefcase, his laptop bag. Welcomed with a hot cup of tea. On a good day, you massage his feet, and he can have his remote and watch the Arsenal match with whoever. Is there anything unreasonable about that desire? So the point I'm making is that according to each one of us coming together, my box of dreams, what I require, what has become expectations to the other person, is actually reasonable. There's nothing irrational about those desires. Now, sometimes because of that conflict, and where I have these dreams, desires, hopes, which have become expectations to you, what I'm communicating to you or what you hear is make my dreams come true. For the man, his dreams, his desires, expectations of having a nice home, peace and quiet, well put together children, not the ones even before he has sat down, they are running all over him and screaming about what didn't go right. His dreams of desire, he's saying, make my dreams come true. For him, this is what I always wanted. This is the reason I pursued you, a nice-looking wife, a nice home with nice children. This is the reason I asked you to marry me. This is what I needed my future to look like, and I need you to make it happen for me. And the same for the lady. I wanted protection, provision. This is what I wanted my future to look like. So what may be completely reasonable and rational to me is that it may not be completely reasonable and rational to the other person, to your partner. And what seems reasonable and rational to me, for them becomes a weight, a bar that has been raised too high, and it feels like a homework assignment, a responsibility. And they feel disappointed when the things that they hoped and desired do not come true. The reality is, at the center of that box is me. The core of our hopes, of our dreams, of our desires is me. My hopes, dreams, and desires are not informed by what Kiama's dreams and desires are. It's about me. I'm at the center of that box. And it usually will not occur to me that, imagine even him, he has a box of dreams that has his own desires, his own hopes, his own aspirations. So the reality is that at the heart of my box is me. It's my hopes, my dreams, my desire. And the more I think about me and what I want, the less I think about him and what matters to him. As I said, it doesn't occur to me that he also has his own hopes and dreams and expectations. Inevitably, when we swap those boxes and we find that what I thought was completely reasonable dream on my end is diametrically opposed to what the other person wants. And over time, as those hopes, dreams, and desires are not met, I then feel I've been left with a number of options. For today, we are going to just look at 4 options. One of the options, and the easiest one to do, is to? Okay, with a bit of courage. Hakuna right or wrong answer. What's the easiest option? To leave, to exit. This is not what I signed up for. And this person will never meet my needs. And the truth is, in some relationships, that is an option, especially when you're dating, when you're single looking to date, you can exit. But it's an easy option. In fact, when people ask, you say, we were not, what's the answer we give? We're not compatible. For most marriages nowadays, because if people unfortunately have to leave each other, sometimes we call them irreconcilable differences. They're irreconcilable differences. Or the person wasn't honest. What actually we are saying with all those things is that none of us was willing to meet the other person's desires. So you pick up your box and leave. You exit. The second option, I'll call it win. And it is where I convince my partner that their box is bad. I manipulate them, I control them, I coerce them until I get my way. I convince them your box is a bad box and mine is a good box. Abandon yours and embrace mine. So the person abandons their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, and they help you to pursue yours. Now, the person in the relationship who wins is happy because, after all, she has abandoned her dreams or he has abandoned his dreams and I have won. But the relationship suffers. The relationship suffers. A third response is to conform. To conform is the flip side of winning, where you become somebody you are not in order to please the other person. They won't love me or accept me the way I am, so I abandon who I am, I abandon my hopes, my desires, my aspirations, so that I can embrace what the other person wants and what makes them happy, even if it leaves me miserable. So I normally think of this one as, the young boy who was told to sit, and he sat reluctantly. So he conformed, but he said in his heart he was standing. Yeah, so they conform, but they're miserable. A fourth option is to compromise. And this is what most couples do. Okay, let me win this one this time, and then the next time, you can win on yours. So you compromise. They're not particularly happy, but they make it work. It's like nipe nikupe sort of arrangement. You do your part, I do mine. I win in one or two, you'll win in one or two, and you get along. Now, there's a fifth option that we will be exploring next week, so please stick around. But this is what I would like to say about these options. Whether you exit, whether you win, whether you conform or comply or compromise, none of these options really help solve the real problem. Actually, the thing about exchanging the box of hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and it becoming a box of expectations, is that it creates a creditor-debtor relationship. It creates a creditor-debtor relationship. You owe me to be able to help me fulfill my dreams. You owe me. And the other person is also looking at it like, you owe me. You owe me a home where there is peace and quiet. You owe me provision of a home that looks like this. And the consequence of creating a debtor-creditor relationship is that there is no gratitude in the relationship. It actually removes gratitude in the relationship. And just to explain it a little, has any one of you ever taken a loan? Whether it's in a bank, a SACCO, from a friend, from your parents, from a friend. I think some of us, everyone might have borrowed. Hata kama ni 100 ama 50, si ndio? Okay. When you borrow from someone, what do they expect you to do? They expect you to pay back. And if you are paying in installments, they expect you to pay the installments right on time. Tell me, do you expect that each time you're supposed to pay back, that you will receive a perfume-laced thank you note and a gift basket of chocolates and fruit because you have paid back? Or just, please pay back, here is a gift for you to pay back. No. You understand? So the debtor-creditor relationship included or incorporated in our own relationships actually removes gratitude from our relationships. People, it is replaced by an entitlement attitude. The gratitude is replaced by an entitlement attitude. We rarely will express gratitude to each other because what you are doing is what I expect of you anyway. So if you buy me a 4-bedroom house, please don't expect a big thank you. If you buy me a powerful 4x4 German machine, please do not expect a big thank you. You are only doing what you should be doing in the first place. If you come and find peace and quiet, you do not say thank you, because in any event, she is doing what she's supposed to have done in the first place. So there is no gratitude. So it brings us then to the question, what do I do with my box of desires? The reality is that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and I don't have desires, hopes, dreams, aspirations. What do I do with that box? Should I pretend that it doesn't exist? Should I pretend that I have no desires, I have no aspirations for my life? Going deeper, are you telling me, Mrs. Kema, are you telling us that our hopes, desires, aspirations are illegitimate? Are they not valid? And should I be penalized for having them? Is there something wrong with me having those desires? Are you saying I should have no expectations at all? The reality is that these are difficult questions to grapple with. And some of us continue to grapple with these questions for many years, and there are no answers to them. What I do know from my own relationship with my own husband, and which has worked, and I don't always remember it. I need to put that caveat. I don't always remember. But sometimes, and as time has gone by, sometimes I remember. And it is what I like to call the principle of expecting nothing. The principle of expecting, that is what I call it. In Kiswahili, we have a better way of putting it. We say, tenda wema, nenda zako. It frees and liberates the soul. Tenda wema, nenda zako. And this is what I've seen with people who have built relationships that last. They refuse to turn their dreams into expectations for their partner. And they do that by asking themselves, what does my spouse owe me? What does my spouse owe me? You know, I remember being a teenager, and I want to say maybe young and foolish. And sometimes, my dad would do something, and in my heart I'm thinking, I can't take that. No. In fact, sometimes I would be as bold as to tell my mom, Mommy, you should not accept that kind of behavior. But my mom would dutifully, and I use the word dutifully, if she was going to serve him nicely, hot, warm food with a smile, sit and talk. And I think she had figured out some of these things. Not always, but sometimes, just saying, what does my spouse owe me? Nothing. They owe me nothing. And that is what couples who build thriving relationships over many years have come to understand. My spouse owes me nothing. They know that whatever they give to their marriage must be given freely, expecting nothing in return. I know it doesn't make logical sense, but you will find couples who have long, joyful marriages are not necessarily the ones who have made the most money. They're not necessarily the ones who have the best careers or the high-flying careers. They're not necessarily the ones who have children like they had hoped. They may have gone through many tough times together, but when you encounter them, you can tell they're true partners and they love each other. And I'm telling you, such couples, most of them, when you investigate, have this principle at their core. They expect nothing from their partner, and they give freely, expecting nothing in return. I think these couples take their cue from something that both Jesus and Paul taught. Jesus, when asked in the first century about what the most important command was, he actually was able to compress the 630 Jewish commands into two and said, it is in John 13:34, a new command I give you, love one another. This sounds simple, but for a married, it sounds simple for people who are in relationships, dating, married couples, but he adds, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. What I think that means, and it is in John 13:34. John 13:34. What that means is that we must follow God's example. And in Ephesians 5:1-2, Paul says, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. In some of the versions, it says, be imitators of Christ. Now, that's hugely countercultural. I think it means you must first know, how did Jesus love us? How did God love us? If someone says, imitate me, follow my example, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. Then you must ask, how does he love? How has he loved? And what does it mean for me to do the same? And you will see that as you consider this, it becomes a bit more easier. What does it mean for us to love Christ the same way he has loved us? Isn't that harsh? Isn't it unreasonable? After all, we are not Jesus, we are not God. Are we able or capable of loving one another the way Christ loved us? It feels like Christ is saying, forget about your box. Love the other person in spite of how they treat your desires. That's actually how it feels like Jesus is saying. But I don't think so. I think that what Christ is saying is that we should be able to follow his example. And his example is that he came and loved us first. He loved us extravagantly. He loved us sacrificially. He loved us recklessly. And when we ignore God like we do, he still loves us. When we have abandoned God, like sometimes we do and pursue our own ways, he still loves us. When we have turned our backs on him, he still loves us. Sometimes we have broken his heart, he has still loved us. And Paul says, just like Jesus, we must walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. In other words, the focus stops being me and my box. My box is there, but that's not the focus. My box is there, but it does not create expectations on the other side. The other person does not owe me what is in my box. So as I am almost ending, this is what I want to ask us. And it's a question I would invite all of us to reflect on. Whether you are single, dating, newly married, married for a long time, was married, no longer married, or widowed, or you're no longer married. This is my question. What is in your box? Do you even know what is in your own box? What are your own hopes and aspirations and desires? Sometimes we accidentally apply pressure on the other person and on the person we love because we are not even clear what is in our own box. And when it is not clear to us, it is not clear to them, and therefore it is a fog. The other partner doesn't know how high should I jump, how low should I duck. So it is important for us to be able to write down clearly what is in my box. What are my expectations of a partner? Once you address that question of what is in your box, you have to address the second question. And that question is, whose box is it? Whose box is it? Am I handing this off and making it someone else's box? Or is somebody living with the extra weight and the extra pressure that they were not designed to live with? Have I inadvertently expected someone I love to carry the expectation of my hopes, dreams, and desires? What is in your box and whose box is it? We'll pick it up from there for next week. Allow me for now to pray. I note that for those dating, preparing for marriage, this is a month of preparation and wisdom. And for those who are hurting in marriage, I pray that this will be a month of solutions and hope. And for those who are in broken relationships, that this will be a month of healing and restoration. So I'd like us to pray, and I'm going to pray from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. God of unfailing love, and a God whose love flows from generation to generation. You have told us in your word that you love us, and your love never fails. May we be filled with love for each other that reflects your love for us. Your love is patient. Help us to be patient with one another. Your love is kind. Help us to be kind to one another. Love does not envy. Help us not to be envious of each other. Your love does not boast. Lord, help us to build our love on humility. Your love does not dishonor others. Lord, help us to honor each other and to respect each other. Your love is not self-seeking. Help us, Lord, to love each other selflessly. Help us to love each other well. Help us to have love that always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. In Jesus' name, we have prayed and we have believed. Amen and amen.